Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez is here over in the good old state of Texas. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
I just want to say before we kick off the early prelim opener, this man has been on fire over in the PFL. 11 of his picks out of 13 on that card. The guy is on absolute fire. The UFC card, I went 12 for 13. We're on a heater at this one. Let's see if we can kick things off in the early prelims and keep that momentum rolling. And kicking things off at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Carli, Judice taking on Juliana Miller. Carlos, who you got in this opening bout?
This one I went with Carli Judice to get it done. She should have the success that, Veronica Hardy had against Juliana Miller. She was able to move in and out, throwing strikes quick, getting out of the pocket, and avoiding most of the takedowns. I think Judice, she doesn't have to get in and out of the pocket that fast. She's already long enough to get that reach, a little bit of height advantage, and she can throw those long strikes, get out of the pocket. And her takedown defense is pretty solid. I don't see how Miller is going to be able to get her down because her wrestling is pretty much moot. Miller is game. She's going to try to mix it up on the feet as best she can, but I don't think she's going to have anything. Carli, they call her crispy. I think that's for the reason, is that everything she throws is crisp and sharp right down the middle, and that's going to show come Saturday. So I'm taking Judice to get it done.
Yeah, 2 for Carli Judice here. I've been impressed with her, and if you're impressed with her, hit that like and subscribe button for your boys here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And her striking, head kick MMA is the gym she trains at, and boy, does that name ring true. This woman has got some nice kickboxing, good takedown defense like Carlos mentioned, and I think Miller here is obviously going to look to try and get this fight to the ground like she does in most of her fights, former Ultimate Fighter winner. How she won that, I don't know. Obviously, in that previous fight against Petrovic, she showed that she was able to kind of weather a little bit of an early storm, was able to get the takedowns, get dominant position, and ultimately win that one 29-28. Coming off of the back of losing her grandmother, she was very motivated in that fight. Don't think it matters in this one. Carli Judice, the much better striker, very high on this woman's striking. She mixes in shots very well. She has a beautiful timed step-in knee that she was able to land in our previous opponent in Nicole Kalari. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that name, but that nice step-in knee, she was able to finish it to the body. I've been very impressed with Judice. She does a good job of fighting the hands, stuffing the head when it comes to the takedowns, and I think realistically, when you watch this woman strike, you can see why she's a fan favorite. She lays it all out on the line, and one of the things that I do really like about her as well is people obviously know about her striking. They want to take her to the mat. They want to take her down. What they do is they back her up against the fence. They shoot in for those shots. And when Carli is able to get an underhook and reverse position, we see a lot of people break, frantically to get back to space. She does a good job of standing there in the pocket, landing a 1-2, making sure her opponent pays the price of admission. I think she gets this one done again by knockout. I could see another step-in knee. I could see some sort of standing TKO here against Miller she's just unathletic, very, very poor defense when it comes to her striking. I like Carli Judice in a big way this week. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Yadir Del Valle taking on Jordan, the Monkey King Leavitt. Carlos, who you got in this one?
This one right here, I'm going to go with Yadir Del Valle. He's pressure. He's going to come forward. He'll take one to give one. You know what I mean? Like that type of striker. Doesn't have a lot of head movement. Sometimes does keep a high guard and slight head, just a little bit, slight head movement.
Head movement! Head movement! Head movement!
Most likely he's just coming forward. He's going to try to walk through some of your strikes. He's not going to eat them, but he finds a way to get around them, and he doesn't mind being in a slugfest. What I do feel is that once this hits the ground, I don't think Del Valle is going to be in that much trouble, even though Leavitt is a credentialed grappler, and he's very dangerous, very slick with his submissions. And the one thing you got to watch out for with Leavitt on the feet is he has very heavy leg kicks. So those are the things that Del Valle needs to worry about. But once it hits the ground, like I said earlier, I think that Del Valle is going to have just enough wrestling to get back. I think he's going to do a very good job trying to keep this fight off the mat. And on the feet, like I said, Leavitt's kicks are good, but I think Del Valle all around up top. He's got good boxing, good kickboxing, and yeah, he's just willing to come forward and press the action. So I'm going to go with Del Valle to get it done. I think he's going to end up breaking Leavitt, probably in the clinch somewhere. I think he's going to get a stoppage, but that's probably just because I don't want to see that twerking.
I mean, shoot, that skills right there. Come on, that looked like Cruz.
I'm right there with you, man. Probably my most confident fighter on the card here. I think this is an ideal stylistic matchup for the Houston Texan here. Obviously fighting in his home state, his home city here. I like him in a big way here. I think I agree with Carlos. I think he should be able to get this one done inside the distance. Jordan Leavitt, to me, is an ideal stylistic matchup here for Del Valle, is just simply because Leavitt possesses two real skill sets that I don't think are going to be a factor in this fight. He likes to grapple. He likes to scramble on the ground. He doesn't necessarily always have the wrestling to be able to get it there, and he has nice kicks from the outside. Well, Del Valle, great on the ground. I think he's probably going to be the more bigger, physically dominant fighter here. Very muscular build. He showed in that Isaac Delgarian fight he was able to take the back, out-grapple and out-wrestle a good wrestler there. And I think in the pocket, when it comes to the exchanges with the boxing, I think he's definitely going to carry the more power. I think he's definitely going to be a guy that's going to be able to stand and trade with a guy like Leavitt, whose hands, to me, are subpar. I think if he stays out of kicking range, there's always a chance that, a guy like Leavitt can sneak up a high kick and catch him. But ultimately, I think as long as this fight plays out in sort of medium or in the clinch at range, I think the kicks of Leavitt could be a problem. But anywhere else on the ground, in the clinch, up against the fence, boxing range, I think it's all Del Valle here. I think we could see a standing TKO, or we could see a kind of landing a big shot on Leavitt, drops him, takes the back, and ultimately finds another rear naked choke here for a submission victory. But I like the Houston Texan native here to get this one done in front of his home crowd. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Jean-Paul Lebosnoyani taking on Phil Rowe. Carlos, who you got in this one?
In this one, I'm going to go with Phil Rowe in this one. I don't know too much about Lebosnoyani. I've watched the video on him. What I can see is that, yeah, he does have a heavy shot, so maybe he's the heavier hitter out of the two. I do know that he's well-rounded, to boot, but I also know that Phil Rowe's very unpredictable, and he fights long, and he fights at range. He's well-rounded as well, and he's got some high-level grappling. He's got experience in the cage. That just might be a tough matchup for the first fight, in the UFC, because I feel that, Lebosnoyani, even though he's got some hype and he does have the skill to go with it, I just think it's too much too soon right now. I think Phil is a little bit more experienced, a little bit more he's got a little bit more skill to be able to get around whatever tools Lebosnoyani has. And I don't think Mr. Jean-Paul here has what it takes, to set traps for someone like Phil Rowe. Phil's very durable. He's very smart when he fights, and he fights long. So I think it's I think I'm going to go with Phil Rowe on this one. I don't, it could go anyway. It can go either way because Lebosnoyani's new. He's got some hype, but I'm going to go with Phil Rowe. I'm going to go with the experience.
Yeah, Phil Rowe stepping in on somewhat, not necessarily short notice, but obviously replacing Austin Vanderford, who was supposed to fight on this card. But Jean-Paul, he is a guy that his father is trained with the Gracies. He's got fantastic jiu-jitsu, and he is obviously a decent kickboxer. If you watch any tapes on him, he has fantastic kicks. In one fight I watched of his, I believe he threw something like 26, 28 kicks in the first round. He sets up his head kick beautifully, but I worry about the height and range disadvantage here that he's going to have against Phil Rowe. Phil Rowe carrying an 8.5-inch reach advantage, 6'3", very tall for 170. And like Carlos said, I think this is a big step up in competition for a guy that's obviously coming in, making his UFC debut. And Phil Rowe needs this one in a bad way. I think he's probably looked at this matchup and said, hey, there's a guy that's going to stand and bang with me on the feet. He's not a heavy wrestler. And the problem with Phil Rowe that he's run into in a lot of his fights, whether it be Suk Ko, whether it be Jake Matthews, guys want to take him down. They want to grapple him. They want to be able to, pretty much wrestle fuck him for 3 rounds.
Let's wrestle, kid. Let's wrestle. Let's wrestle. Let's wrestle.
He's struggled with that. He's not going to have that problem here, which is why I'm going to pick Phil Rowe. I think Phil Rowe has done a fantastic job working on his boxing. He stays long, throws shots straight down the middle. I worry about the age, I worry about the decline, but I think this is a good matchup for him. I think Paul is going to struggle. He's going to throw a lot of kicks from the outside. He does a good job darting in with the hands, but I think Phil Rowe is going to be able to counter him here. I do think that when Paul, kind of throws combinations, he likes to be able to run in kind of with a flurry of, 2-3 punch combinations, and that's where Phil's, kind of counter boxing with the right hand straight down the middle is going to be available. Phil also has good kicks. He's no slouch on the ground when it comes to his jiu-jitsu. Very good triangles, very good arm bars. He's always rolling for legs as well to kind of cause scrambles. But I think if this one plays out on the feet and he doesn't have to worry about the wrestling, at some point Phil Rowe is going to be able to catch Jean Paul. I do think Jean Paul is a nice addition to the UFC, but ultimately I think this is going to be, like Carlos said, too much too soon. Give me Phil Rowe, the underdog here, to get this one done. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Punahele Soriano taking on Ramiz Brahimaj. Carlos, who you got in this one?
In this one, I'm going to go with Brahimaj in this one. Soriano likes to throw that overhand and shoot the double right after. I don't see that really being that big of a factor in this against Brahimaj because, yeah, he's going to have to defend that overhand, but he does have pretty good takedown defense as well, but he's also able to fight off his back, looking for submissions. Soriano's going to want to get that ground and pound, but in order for him to get that ground and pound, he's going to create a little bit of a gap, some bit of distance to be able to create that space to throw those punishing shots. And that's going to give Brahimaj a chance to get back to his feet or open up an avenue to look for a submission. On the feet, Brahimaj, I think, is he's still learning. He's still improving with his striking, but I think he's just a little bit more technical than Soriano, whereas Soriano gets his power from a lot of those looping shots. I think Brahimaj is a little bit more straighter, a little bit tighter. And he's not looking to overthrow and anything. He's just looking to hit. And if he gets you, he gets you. But he's not looking to throw big bombs all the time. But I think this may hit the ground. I think that Travis Lutter jiu-jitsu that Brahimaj's got in his back pocket is probably going to play a factor whether Soriano wants to take this to the ground or not. And I think on the feet, Brahimaj can have a lot of success because he's not throwing 100 miles an hour like Soriano. So I think cardio could be an issue for Punahele. So I'm going to go with Brahimaj to get it done.
Yeah, I like your breakdown there, Carlos. I see very much similar to you here. And Brahimaj's been on an absolute tear since he's had that neck surgery, had that all fixed up. He's been on obviously a 3-fight finishing streak. Got it done with the power against Mickey Gall. He's obviously had back-to-back guillotine victories. And I think this fight plays out one of two ways, in my opinion. I think if it stays on the feet, it's anybody's. It could be a 50-50 matchup here. Punahele Soriano, is obviously got power, like Carlos mentioned. I think Brahimaj stays a little bit more technical, but both guys have pop in the hands. Soriano tends to loop shots, and I think that's where this fight's going to end up taking place. He's going to loop a shot. Brahimaj is going to obviously take this fight to the ground, duck underneath those big shots, and obviously get this fight to the ground where he's going to have more success. With Brahimaj, obviously, he does have a nice guillotine, so I wouldn't be surprised here if Soriano does shoot in for a sloppy takedown. We've seen in his previous fight, obviously, when he went and fought against Nicolau, he decided to wrestle fuck him, which obviously is the game plan you want to use against him. I think if he comes in here and decides to mix in any grappling, he's going to get submitted. He doesn't necessarily defend takedowns very well. And even in that fight, we had Nicolau, obviously Veretennikov, he was able to get Soriano in a guillotine. He was able to get out of that, but that's because that's not his main skill set. Brahimaj, if he gets hold of that neck in this fight, he will submit you and make it 3 guillotine victories in a row. I like this fight wherever it takes place for Brahimaj. I do think he can win a stand-up back and forth war. I think that his ability to be able to stay more technical than Soriano is going to pay off dividends for him. And I do think as well that he's falling in love with his ability to be able to get the finish. He takes his opportunities. I think Soriano tends to, kind of think as he's in there, whereas I think Brahimaj tends to, let things come a little bit more natural. I think he's feeling himself right now. I think he's got a lot of confidence. I can't get in the way of that. And to me, Soriano, when you listen to a lot of his interviews, he tends to have a lot of doubt. He's always kind of very harsh, very critical of himself. And I think when he kind of gets into a bad situation here against Brahimaj, he's going to fold. So give me Ramiz Brahimaj here to get this one done. Former dog of the week to get it done for us again on the channel. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Jocelyn Edwards taking on Nora Cornolle. Cornhole, as I like to call her. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to take Jocelyn Edwards in this one. I don't really see the fight being much different than the first meeting they had. That Edwards pretty much won that first fight. After watching the video again, Edwards had a little bit too much respect for Cornolle on the feet with her striking. Not that Cornolle's bad in the striking, it's just the fact that she was coming forward striking, so it looked a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more effective. But she was getting, Edwards was getting her shots in as well. And I thought she had a lot more ground control. She kept getting takedowns, maybe 1 or 2 takedowns each round, getting a lot of control, forcing Cornolle to get back to her feet. But when Cornolle got up to her feet, she wasn't very active, threw a couple strikes, and Jocelyn threw a couple strikes. Cornolle ended up getting a decision. I think my boy here on Conspiracy Corner probably thought that Cornolle got that because they were in France. I think now they're fighting. I think Edwards gets the nod in this one, so that's who I'm taking.
Your boy does think over in Conspiracy Corner that Cornolle probably did get that one over in France, but she ain't getting this one. Give me Jocelyn Edwards. I got a good feeling about this one. Jocelyn Edwards, to me, when you break this one down, height, reach, advantage. I think she's coming to her own right now, probably in the best physical shape she's been. I think she's better everywhere. I think the wrestling, really improved. She's finishing, women on the feet. She's finishing women on the ground. It's kind of just pick your poison with her at the moment. I think that obviously she's in her physical prime at the ripe age of 30. Cornolle, 36 years old, not something I'm really looking to pick when it comes especially to women's MMA. I think she's a little bit slower. She does have some pop in her hands, nice Muay Thai style. She can show that she can attack weaknesses in her opponents in Cowan. Obviously, she didn't have much of a ground game. She was able to use her jiu-jitsu there. But when she fights real level competition, Carla Rosa, Cavalcante, she tends to struggle. And I think Edwards here on an ascendancy. I think it's kind of whichever way Edwards wants it. If she wants to mix in the grappling and wrestle her, beat her up on the ground, I think she's going to be much more physically imposing. I think she's going to want revenge after obviously losing that decision over in France, like Carlos mentioned. And I think she's going to come in here motivated on a 3-fight win streak, all by finishes. You don't see that in the women's division. I like her here. I think she's a respectable favorite, and she should be for a reason to get it done here in this rematch. Give me Jocelyn Edwards. I'm not going to say inside the distance. I think both women very durable, but I think she's going to win a very lopsided decision here. So Jocelyn Edwards here might even get some money from me this week. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Alden, Coria taking on Luis, Gurule. Carlos, who you got in this one?
In this one, I'm going to go with Coria to get it done. I think he has some very clean striking. He doesn't throw a lot of high volume, but he does throw his strikes a little straighter. Gurule too, so they both implement like a lot of different strikes, but I think that Coria is actually more of a grapple heavy kind of approach to this. But striking, I think he's a little bit more technical. I think Gurule believes in the power that he's supposed to have had as he was coming into the UFC, and I think that somebody like Coria, who's going to kind of pick his shots, kind of touch you, and look to get that takedown, I think it's going to be a little bit of a problem for Gurule. He's not going to have that target that's going to get into an exchange with him so he can land that wild overhand right. I also think that, yes, Gurule can wrestle as well, so it's going to kind of stalemate each other, but I think Coria's ground and pound is going to play a lot into this. I think once he gets him down, he's going to look to create some space and start to smash Gurule on the ground. I think Coria is actually going to be the bigger, possibly stronger of the two in this, and I think that's also going to play a factor against Gurule, even though Gurule has a Greco-Roman background, so those guys are definitely very strong. I just think that the size is going to play a little bit of a difference in this, and the reach, and I don't know, Coria is just so composed. He's very relaxed in there. He feels comfortable on the ground, in a scramble, standing up. I got to go with Coria to get it done.
Yeah, 2 for Coria here, the Texan native here. I think he gets this one done over in his home state. And nicknamed the Cobra. I like it. The way this guy strikes, I think the boxing is going to be the main weapon of choice here against Gurule. Gurule likes to throw a lot of looping shots. 5'5" in Gurule, winging those, sort of hooks and overhands. I think it's just going to end up him getting, his face jabbed off. Nice 1-2 from the Cobra Coria here. Does a good job of being able to time his opponent with those straight shots in the boxing. Good head movement. And we can see that he can also wrestle and has good takedown defense. So I like the kid. I think this is a good matchup for him. Obviously, Gurule, 0-2 inside the UFC, not been able to get it done so far, and I think that streak continues here. I like Coria to be able to get it done with the boxing, just kind of peppering the jab, the faster striker on the feet, and I think that Gurule hasn't necessarily proven to be UFC level, and I kind of feel like he might end up getting knocked out here. When you look at the previous fight that Coria had against Costa, the training partner of Diego Lopez, he came in there as an underdog, and he looked like he should have been the favorite. He looked fantastic in that fight, obviously being able to defend takedowns, get takedowns of his own, landed on the feet with high, crisp, tight level boxing, and I think realistically it's just going to be rinse and repeat. It's going to be the exact same here. Guys with nice boxing, as we can see from Ilia Topuria, they tend to go far. I'm not calling him Ilia Topuria. I'm not saying he's on that level, but guys with nice, crisp boxing tend to do very, very well. And I think a guy like Gurule, who struggled with a guy like Ode Osbourne, he got clipped and got tagged a lot of times by Ode. I think it's going to be very similar in this matchup here with a long, rangy striker that's going to have the speed advantage. So give me Coria here to get this one done with the boxing and ultimately maybe even find a stoppage. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Alibi, Idiris taking on Ode Osbourne, and I'm going to kick this one off. Give me Ode Osbourne here. Underdog? No way. What have we actually seen from Alibi here? He is a guy obviously coming off of the Ultimate Fighter finale. He did lose in that previous fight against Morales. He's got nice spinning attacks, don't get me wrong. The Kazakhstan native, you see the flag, you think wrestling. No, this guy is a decent wrestler, but doesn't necessarily have the ground game I think everybody kind of expected him to have in that Ultimate Fighter finale. And we know with Ode Osbourne, he is a guy that you want to be able to grapple. If you can't grapple with him and you are forced to stand and strike with him, he is going to give you a lot of problems. Ode, obviously the Jamaican sensation here. He is a guy that likes to counter strike. He has fantastic hands, good hand speed, nice kicks. And I think realistically, he's just going to struggle on the feet with a guy like Ode Osbourne. And Ode Osbourne, if you go back and watch that fight with Steve Erceg, he was able to clip Erceg multiple times in that fight. Erceg, a top high-level guy, in my opinion. Erceg also wasn't able to take him down and control him on the ground. And I think Erceg's wrestling is probably a little bit better than Idiris is here. And I think realistically, if you go back, you do your tape study, you look at the matchups, Ode Osbourne talked about, and Dominic Cruz pointed this out, that in his previous fight, he obviously knew he was getting taken down a lot. So he went away, he worked with Aljamain Sterling heavily on his takedown defense. And it showed in that Steve Erceg fight. Erceg was only able to get him down 3 out of 10 attempts. I think a guy in Idiris here is going to be forced to stand and trade. He's going to struggle to get this fight to the ground. And ultimately, Ode Osbourne is either going to find a knockout or beat him up on the feet for 3 rounds. Idiris does have nice spinning attacks, don't get me wrong. He's always live to land some sort of spinning back fist, spinning elbow, spinning wheel kick, but it's nothing that Ode Osbourne hasn't seen, and I think this is a good stylistic matchup here for the 34-year-old to get back in the win column and kind of keep his UFC tenantship alive. And I think Idiris is a guy that's not proven to be UFC level. He is a guy that, he went on to the Ultimate Fighter. He looked good. Everyone thought he was going to come in and be this big favorite and get it done against Morales, but he was not proven to be UFC level yet. So until he wins against a guy in the UFC, a ranked opponent here in Ode Osbourne, or formerly ranked opponent, I should say, in Ode Osbourne, I don't think he can be trusted. So give me Ode Osbourne here as the underdog spot to get this one done. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I also went with Ode Osbourne to get it done. And, pretty much for all the reasons that you just mentioned and the fact that Idiris here, he's got a little bit of a wrestling background as well, but he's one of those guys that wants to stand and engage. And if you're going to stand and engage with Osbourne, I think he's the better athlete. I think he's the better striker. And I think he's faster from point A to point B. And I think that spinning attacks, yes, he's probably seen them before, but sometimes you spin too much and you get caught. And against somebody like Osbourne, I could see that happening, him turning to do a spinning back fist and getting caught with a straight right down the middle. So I'm going to go with Osbourne to get it done. I think that Idiris, when you know that you're fighting against somebody like Osbourne who's been struggling with takedown defense, that's something that you should bring to this just to test it. I just don't think that mentally that's his number one. I think his number one is striking. So to force wrestling to be your number one is just, it's not second nature. So I'm going to take Osbourne to get it done. Idiris, unfortunately, I think he's got some potential. I just don't think he's going to get it done.
And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Carlos Leal taking on Chidi, bang, bang.
You know what it's going to be? Chidi, bang, bang.
Bang, Njokuani. Carlos, who you got in this one?
Uh, I ended up taking Carlos Leal in this one. I think both fighters like to get in the clinch. I think that Chidi's very active with the knees and the elbows. I think the height advantage is going to be a huge problem for Leal in the clinch because Leal likes to throw knees in the clinch. I also think Chidi's knees can reach Leal's chin a lot quicker and a lot easier. And I think the fact that you're a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you like to clinch, and Chidi's going to allow you to clinch. Get that body lock. Work those knees, get him against the cage, and get him to the ground. As soon as you get him to the ground, work that ground and pound. Keep your weight above him, keep him down, and I think you're going to have a lot of success. Has Leal fought like that before? He has. He has got it done, but he does like to stand. And the thing about this that makes it a little up in the air is the fact that Leal, who likes to clinch, with Chidi, who likes to clinch, doesn't move his head. And when he's striking, he's stiff and he's right in front of you. Now, he does bring some power as well that Chidi's got to watch out for, but I do think that the grappling is going to be an issue. And is he going to be able to get him down? I feel that he's going to be able to get Njokuani down to the mat and be able to control him for, a pretty good amount of time throughout the round to squeak out the decision. Don't make me look like a liar, Leal. You got to get this done. So I'm taking him, brother. Who you got?
Honestly, Carlos and I talked about this one before we broke this one down, and I got to say, this is probably one of the toughest matchups to break down on the card, in my opinion. I think it's just going to depend on which style kind of perseveres, which guy comes in with the right game plan here. And Carlos Leal, obviously a guy that likes to be very aggressive, very heavy on the forward pressure. He likes to back you up against the fence and use his grappling. He likes to get in the clinch. He likes to bully you. And sometimes he walks you down with absolute disdain. He doesn't care what comes back. He just wants to load up and land and realistically just test his power against yours. If you kind of look at his matchups, similar idealistic matchups here in his career, he won and fought over in the PFL. No brainer that his stylistic matchup that he could show here is against Sadabusi. Sadabusi, a rangy kickboxer, 6'3", a guy that likes to be able to fight out at range. Chidi, again, very tall for the weight division, 6'3". He likes to be able to fight at range. But the difference here, I think, in this matchup compared to that matchup is Chidi Njokuani, he likes the clinch. He likes to be able to mix up knees, elbows. He has a really nice Thai boxing style. He does a nice teep up the middle as well, step in knees. A lot of weapons that Sadabusi doesn't tend to use. He's more of a kickboxer than a Thai boxer. And I think realistically, this fight's going to play out in one of two ways. Either Leal's going to be able to back him up against a fence, kind of work the body lock, trip takedowns here and get Chidi down and then ultimately beat him up on the ground or sub him. Or Chidi's going to be able to catch him in the clinch because Leal is going to give him the clinch and he's good with that Thai clinch with knees. I think it's really, really tough to call. If you want to take a flyer shot on Chidi Njokuani by knockout this week, I do not blame you. I think the odds will be good here as an underdog, but I am going to pick Carlos Leal. I do think that the grappling is going to be head and shoulders, enough to be able to get him the victory. And I do think that Sadabusi has much better takedown defense than Chidi Njokuani. I do think, though, that if you are putting Leal in parlays, I would be careful. I do think that Chidi is live for a finish here, and I would not be surprised if that happens. Leal is a guy that we saw just get knocked out in his previous fight because he didn't respect the power coming back his way in Muslim Salikov. And I do think that, he's got to be wary, especially here against a guy in Njokuani that obviously can get it done in the clinch, which is where he does his best work. So give me Carlos Leal here to get the grappling going. If he decides to stand and trade at range with a guy that's much taller, much rangier, then all bets are off. I wouldn't be surprised if Chidi gets this one done out at range or in the clinch. So Carlos Leal, be on your P's and Q's and get this one done here for me, brother. And next up at UFC Fight Night, we've got Michel Pereira taking on Zachary Reese. And I'm going to kick this one off here. Give me Pereira, man. I think Pereira here, get right spot. It feels like it should be here against Zachary Reese. No shame in Zachary Reese. He's probably proven a little bit more to me than what I originally thought. Tall man defense, tends to get off the slow starts, tends to get beaten up early in rounds. And we saw in his last fight against McVeigh, took that fight on short notice, don't get me wrong, but McVeigh is not UFC level. He came out and put it on Zachary Reese early in that fight, beating him up in the clinch. They both ended up on the ground. Zachary Reese was able to use his grappling to get it done. But to me, Michel Pereira, obviously he's been on a 3-fight skid, but it's been against some of the better guys in the division. Anthony Hernandez, who's in the main event here against Strickland. Strickland, been on an ascendancy. Abusna Magomedov is no slouch, in my opinion. I know Carlos might say otherwise, and Kyle Dorcas, who's a guy, that we've seen improve, good ground game, but Zachary Reese, man, I feel like if you can't beat Zachary Reese, in my opinion, and Michel Pereira, if you cannot beat him, then you should retire. This should be all Pereira here. I can't believe that he's only a slight favorite. And I think the reason for this line being so close is because people don't trust Pereira on this 3-fight skid. He's kind of been on an ascendancy, finishing guys early in the first round. He's looked great. And then since then, he's kind of really taken a fall off of a cliff in terms of performances. We know with Michel Pereira, obviously very explosive in round one, physical specimen, backflips, dancing to the cage. Know what we're going to get from this guy. He's been around the block, a lot of MMA experience, and in UFC as well. The guy's very explosive, especially early. He hunts to the body. He'll finish you in round one, and if he doesn't get that finish, then he tends to gas. So my only concern here is that Pereira puts it on Zach Reese early in round one, or he doesn't get the finish and he gasses, and Zach Reese is able to take over, which is what he's shown he can do in previous fights against guys like Josh McVeigh. Or Pereira tends to sort of manage his gas tank here and ultimately doesn't push himself. You saw in that Abusna Magomedov fight, he was so worried about his gas tank and him kind of having not enough for the later rounds that he wasn't able to push himself early, and ended up being kind of a slouchy performance from him. So Pereira, I feel confident in you. Don't prove me wrong here. I feel like, again, I'm going to reiterate this for the channel. If he doesn't win against Zachary Reese, this is an ideal matchup. He should retire.
Recently retired.
You are retired?
Yes. And now,
physical or mental?
This is terrible. He should be able to finish Zach Reese early in round one. If not, I think Reese might come back late in round 2 or 3. Carlos, who you got in this one?
Well, whether he retires or not after this one, if he loses, I don't think he's going to have a problem, because that'll be 4. I think the UFC will be like, what happened to this guy? They're going to get rid of him. But I am going to go with Pereira as well. And the only reason why, he's the better athlete. He's the better fighter. Yes, his cardio has been lacking in the later rounds because he empties the gas tank in the first, pretty much trying to get you out of there. But since the Hernandez fight, he's been trying to manage it, and it hasn't worked for him, because that's just not how he's built to fight. And if anyone you're going to finish in the first round, maybe early second, it's going to be Zachary Reese. He leaves a lot of openings, and he's very hesitant in the beginning of the fight. So although he's been on this very unimpressive skid, I think he can land the shots that are necessary to get Zach Reese out of there. So I'm going to take Pereira to get it done. And like you said, too, we're going to give him his props. Reese has also done very well in his last couple of fights, and he's looked better. But just because you've looked better doesn't mean you should be beating someone the caliber of Pereira. So let's go, Michel. Let's get it done, brother.
Yeah, Pereira, save the dancing for Fortnite, baby, and get this guy out of here. I like you, but you've been on on a bit of a poor performance streak here. So let's get this one done, Ben. Come on. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Ante Delija taking on Serghei Spivac. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm gonna go with Delija in this one to get it done. Coming off that strange KO loss to Cortez Acosta, I think he really needs to get it back, and I think he wants it back really bad. I think he's going to be able to get this done. He's training with some of the best heavyweights you can find over with Aspinall and at that gym. And I also feel like he's got quick hands. He's got good boxing. He can mix up his strikes when he needs to. And he's got good takedown defense as well. And he's skilled on the ground. And all Spivac wants to do is clinch you, get you up against the cage, and start trying to work his way to get you down on the ground so he can get on top and just kind of smother you with shots and look for submissions. If Spivac is not the big guy in that ring, I don't know how that's going to happen. And if he's when he fought Derek Lewis, he's the grappler in that exchange, so he's able to get the best of him. Delija can do all of that, and I think he's the stronger of the two, and I think he's going to find the openings with the straighter strikes in comparison to Spivac's looping overhands that he throws in his hooks. So for Spivac to win, he's got to make it an ugly fight. I think Delija, once Spivac's trying to make it ugly, keeps it clean, throws the clean strikes down the middle, gets it done. I think he's going to get Spivac out of there. But Spivac's a little sloppy with those overhands and his takedowns. I just don't see a way that he gets Delija to the ground and controls him.
Yeah, for me, two for Delija here. Delija by knockout, in my opinion. Spivac is a guy, 4 of his 6 losses have come by him getting knocked out. Spivac is a guy that obviously he's shown improvements in the striking, but where he gets it done, he wants to back you up against a fence, body lock takedowns, trip takedowns. He does not have a blast double. He doesn't necessarily have a single. It's pretty much just being able to back you up, get you against the fence, and use his sort of trips and get on top from there, where his ground game is pretty decent, but he's not getting this fight to the ground. Delija is going to be too fast. I think the hand speed here of Delija is going to be put on notice, and I'm going to say here, like Carlos mentioned, that Waldo Cortez Acosta performance, what the fuck was that? Do you know how many times as a UFC bettor, I'm about to go on a rant, do you know how many times as a UFC bettor I have watched something happen and they've gone with the decision, you know, I don't know, Jacob Malkoun, elbows to the back of the head. Oh, we're going to, you know, we're not going to go back. We're going to call it in the moment and we're going to stick with that decision. But no, all of a sudden now Anton Delija gets the knockout, but we're going to go back and check the eye poke, let the fight start again. And oh, lo and behold, adrenaline dump, guy gets knocked out the other way.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Out the other way. But, you know, shit happens. It's MMA. It's why we love the sport. It's a great sport. But I think Anton Delija comes in here with an absolute rocket up his ass, wanting to get this one back. And I think on the feet, Spivac is, you know, head and shoulders going to get knocked out here. In my opinion, one of my more confident picks on this fight card. Delija, like Carlos mentioned, trains over with the Tom Aspinall crew of heavyweights up north. I think they're going to have him ready, primed, ready to just knock out Spivac here early in round 1. Spivac is not going to be able to back him up. Delija is going to know that he can have the power advantage. He knows that he's got the hand speed here to touch Spivac's chin. And I think ultimately, even if Spivac does survive round 1, he's going to be a bloody mess here and not be able to get the takedowns. And I don't think that Delija is... You know, I think his takedown defense is good enough to keep this one standing regardless if Spivac gets him in the clinch. So give me Delija getting the knockout and ultimately getting revenge. And yes, I will be putting money on it. And yes, I'm still bitter about that decision there from the UFC to go back to the replay. Yes, it was an eye poke, but how many times do we let decisions go and we don't go back and check the replay, huh? Give me Anton Delija, man. Get this guy out of here. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Melquizael Costa taking on Dan Ige. And I'm going to kick things off here. 50K Ige, man, obviously not necessarily been on the best run. Obviously, we know he struggled with the range. We struggled with the takedown short notice against Diego Lopez. Obviously fighting the best of the best. And obviously Melquizael Costa, he's ascending the rankings. He's been on a win streak. And he's now getting some tougher opponents here, obviously, now that he's on the cusp at the 14th ranked spot. But Costa, obviously nice kicks. He's got good body lock, trip takedowns, and I do think that Dan Ige tends to struggle with the rangier fighters, and Melquizael Costa here, 3-inch reach advantage, is definitely going to have it. Sorry, it's 3-inch height advantage, same reach. I think he's definitely going to be able to poke and prod with those kicks. He has a nice teep, nice calf kicks, but I do think that Dan Ige has good boxing. I think he's a live underdog here. I think we keep Costa out of parlays this week, even though he is a respectable favorite. Dan Ige needs the victory, and I always say as well, a desperate fighter is a dangerous fighter, and if you look, even against Pitbull, that was a competitive fight. He's got good boxing. He's still got power in the hands. He's got a nice timed overhand and one-shot power that can change a fight at any moment. We saw that in the Sean Woodson fight. He was able to get on the inside and land that big bomb against Sean Woodson, which, whether you agree with the stoppage or not, it was able to at least convince the judges, the referee, to stop that fight. I do think that Costa could mix in some grappling here as the bigger guy. I do think that he's got good top control and good body locks, but ultimately I'm going to lean to Costa, keep this one at range, you know, kind of land the bigger shots with the kicks. His hands are improving. He's on an ascendancy. And until I see Dan Ige at 34 years old at 145, you know, kind of show me any different, I can't really trust him here. Even if you look at that Sean Woodson performance, if you don't agree with the stoppage and that fight plays out for the rest of the fight, that would be 4 losses in a row for Dan Ige here. So I am going to go with Costa. I don't love it. I'm probably not going to bet him either. I do think that Costa gets this one done in a slight lean. 50K Ige, though, is always live. You know that. He's got that 50K Ige name for a reason. He's always live for a bonus with that right hand. But, Carlos, who you going with?
Oh, brother, all right. I'm going to go with Ige in this one. And for the reasons that you said is that the range of Costa, I think that's going to be the biggest problem. I also think that the fact that Costa's got a lot more output, because I think Dan loves that boxing style, and he doesn't like to mix anything up, but he also doesn't throw a lot of high volume either, but he does throw some heavy shots, and he does attack the body. And I think that going to the body is something that Melqui Acosta is not, used to. But I also think that he's going to throw a lot of kicks because, that reach advantage. He's going to want to keep Ige at distance. And if anyone's going to close the distance, it's going to be Costa. But in that clinch exchange and on the ground, I think Ige's got the advantage there. So I think it'd be best if Costa stays away from there. And like you said, I think Ige could put him out at any time, or at least put him on Queer Street. So I think we're going to go with Ige because he's tough, he's durable. He's tested, and this is going to be Costa's test. And I think that maybe Ige can squeak it out. Just enough work, hurt him to the body, hurt him up top, win those rounds. I'm going to take Ige. I don't think he's going to get a finish. I think Costa's doing too good to be stopped. I think he's also very durable too. But I think Ige is going to get it done.
Mark my words right now, that might be a pick that I'm going to regret later on, and I think Carlos to have the balls to pick Ige, I think he might be right. But we'll see on Saturday. We'll see which guy gets it done. And next up at UFC Fight Night, Strickland taking on Hernandez. We've got Jeff Neal taking on Uros Medic. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as Carlos tells you who he's got in this matchup.
I'm going to take Jeff Neal in this one. Defensively, he's very sound. He doesn't really make many mistakes. He's very boxing heavy. He's got very good straights. At points, he likes to headhunt. I do like when he goes to the body, but that's one thing I don't like is when he starts to headhunt. At times, he mixes up good angles, slick snapping, straight left. But the one thing is he doesn't have a sense of urgency. And that's what Medic kind of brings to the table is he's long, he's rangy, but he also likes to throw more in combination. And when he throws more in combination, he likes to come forward. And if you're going to come forward against a guy like Jeff Neal, he's going to tag you, and he's going to tag you with that straight left. And that's going to change the outcome of the fight. And I think that Jeff Neal's defense, plus the fact that he could take a shot pretty well, is going to get him through some of Medic's shots. I think Medic is probably a good striker. I don't think he's that strong to rock Neal right off the bat, with one shot. But I do think that he's going to have a hard time getting a clean shot on him. And I don't see this fight going to the ground at all. But if Medic tries to take him down, Neal's not going to go down. Neal can get back up. And I just feel it's probably going to be a stoppage, and I think Neal's going to get this win that he pretty much needs, and it's going to be that straight left again, right down the middle.
Yeah, great breakdown from Carlos. To be honest, he took the words right out of my mouth, so you're about to hear pretty much the same breakdown, except with a British accent. So
Where's the lamb sauce?
I pretty much see it the exact same way. When you watch tape on Medic, I think he likes to crash into the pocket, great kickboxing, good finisher, a guy that's obviously struggled with the ground game. We're not going to see any of that here. I think both guys are going to play this one out on the feet. Obviously, Hands of Steel Neal, for a nickname, is pretty much standing true. Very, very tight, high guard, nice kicks, and really does a good job of being able to dart in and out of range. Range management is a big key here, I think, in this matchup. Medic, he tends to crash into the pocket and then end combinations with kicks. He has a very nice, snappy high kick that he tends to catch people with. But Neal's, defensively sound most of the time. His hands are almost glued to the top of his head, realistically. He has that kind of, I don't want to say Mike Tyson because I think it's an insult to Mike Tyson, but very, very high guard where he's moving in and out. And I think that in itself, and along with the range management here, is going to help him to be able to stay defensively sound against Medic's kicks. And I think when it comes to the hands, I think Neal is going to have a much, much better time here finding the target of Medic. And I think Neal's chin is also a little bit better out of the two as well. I think Medic has shown in the in his UFC tendency that he can get cracked, but he can also crack you. And I think with a guy like Neal, he's just going to be able to wait for Medic's impatient attack. He's going to come in, he's going to dart in, trying to be able to find that knockout, and ultimately Neal's going to counter him and find the knockout himself. I think as well, like Carlos mentioned, I said earlier in one of the breakdowns that, a desperate fighter is obviously a dangerous fighter, and a guy in Jeff Neal, 35 years old, lost 3 of his last 4, fighting in his home state as well, obviously, of Texas. He's going to have the crowd behind him. I think this is a good matchup. A step down in competition as well. I know Medic is obviously coming off of 2 knockout wins, but Jeff Neal here, fighting the creme de la creme in this division. Carlos Prates, no slouch. You've got a guy in Ian Gary who's obviously right up there. Shavkat Rakhmonov, they're his 3 losses. There's no shame in losing to any of those guys. I think this is a step down in competition that Neal ultimately needs at this point in his career, and I think he's going to be able to get this one done inside the distance here with the defensive sound boxing that he's got, ultimately timing a shot down the middle as Medic crouches in the pocket carelessly. And that brings us to the main event here for UFC Fight Night. Strickland taking on Hernandez. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as Carlos breaks down this main event.
I'm gonna take Fluffy in this one. I think he's gonna test the cardio of Strickland with that incredible work rate, and Strickland has very good cardio too. But the one thing is that he's always just coming forward and striking, and he's striking against people that are a little uncomfortable striking because he spars all the time, so he feels very comfortable in most standing, positions. But I hear how great he is on the ground, and we haven't gotten to see a lot of it, and I'm sure that's not a joke. He's worked with high-level guys, but I just think that when it comes to the transition, the flow of the fight, I think going against somebody like Hernandez is just a nightmare. He's going to go from striking right into a takedown. He's going to go right into ground and pound. He's going to be looking for submissions. He's going to be pulling on the back of your head. He's going to be keeping his weight on top of you. And if you find your way back to your feet, on the way up, you're going to be eating knees. You're going to be eating punches. If you get separation, he's going to be right in your face with more combinations to a takedown. Everybody knows that's the same recipe every time he fights. You're going to have something like Kevin Holland where you hit him with a body shot to drop him. And I don't think Strickland has that. He doesn't have that one shot to land clearly and put him out or hurt him to the body. You know what I mean? So I got to say, I don't know how a fighter slows down somebody like Hernandez, but you got to have something that can slow him down, some type of pop, some type of power, or even in the grappling area, the exchanges, you got to keep him on his back. And he's very difficult to keep on his back because once you're down, he's going to attack your base and he's going to create some space when you're trying to get a solid base, and he's going to get the space to get back up. So I do feel that just the constant moving, the flowing from one piece of offense to another, I don't know how Strickland's going to handle that. So I'm going to take Hernandez. I don't think Strickland's going to get gassed. I think he's going to be just fine. I just think he's going to be a step or two behind. So yeah, I'm going to take Fluffy to get it done. I like Strickland, but I got to go Hernandez in this one. I like him too.
Yeah, I like Strickland as well. Both guys, obviously a great main event here. And I think Carlos and I, there's been a theme here on this card. We must have been cheating on the same test, reading off the same notes, because I see this one very similar. The thing that's really pushed me over the edge with Fluffy Hernandez is the cardio, the pressure. Obviously, we know he wants to get you to the ground. We know he wants to be able to wrestle, fuck you, get on top, beat you up with ground and pound. And with Strickland, we know he's got fantastic takedown defense. He's very difficult to take down and hold down. But the difference to me here is that Fluffy Hernandez, like Carlos mentioned, he's going to be beating you up in the clinch. He's going to be stamping on your feet. He's going to be doing everything that he can to be able to cause damage and cause a car crash. The thing that really pushed me over the edge to take Fluffy here is that when you go back and watch the tape on Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis, if you look in that second fight, it was very competitive in rounds 1, 2, and 3. But Strickland, later on in that fight, it's not that his cardio fell off of a cliff. It's just that he just doesn't quite have enough in that rounds 4 and 5. And I think that's where Hernandez is going to pull away. We know with Hernandez that he likes to take one to be able to give one. And I think realistically here that Strickland doesn't have that one punch pop, like Carlos mentioned, to be able to get Hernandez's respect. So I do like Fluffy here to get this one done. I don't think he's going to be able to take Strickland down and hold him down, but I think he's going to take him down. Strickland's going to get back up. It's going to be very tiring for him, and ultimately as the fight plays out longer and longer, that's going to take any punch, any power away from Strickland that he does actually have in those teeps and jabs. And I think ultimately Strickland doesn't have a lot to be able to get the respect out of Hernandez. So even if Hernandez doesn't get the takedowns, I think it's just going to be him kind of having that forward pressure, having the moments, beating Strickland up in the clinch. And as the fight plays out, I think Hernandez is going to take over as Strickland tends to fade a little bit at this point in his career at 34. I love the brash talking of Sean Strickland. I love this fight. I think it's a good stylistic matchup. I think people are going to get suckered into the underdog money here of Sean Strickland knowing the takedown defense. But I think Hernandez is a guy that needs to fight for the belt soon. And I think this is going to be another breakout performance from him, keeping that win streak alive. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button, as Carlos is going to let you know what you should do if you enjoy this content.
Huh?
And Carlos is back, ladies and gentlemen. Let him know what he's got to do if you enjoy this content.
Guys, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. We enjoy doing this. We hope you enjoy listening, and we'll see you on the next one.
We'll work on using the mute button. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. We'll catch you in the next one. Check out some of our other videos. We've got PFL. This man is tearing it up at the PFL, 11 of 13. I've had almost 2 perfect cards this year in UFC, looking to keep the streak alive. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.